What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Talking Each Other Home. My name is Dani, and I'm back again with Hamid. And the last time we had a conversation was like 11 months ago. That was the last time I actually recorded a podcast at all. So, kind of coming out of the woodwork to talk about Peru, to talk about Huachuma, the Huachuma Foundation, and also the cactus sanctuary that's being built in the Sacred Valley. So anyway, Hamid, welcome back. Thank you so much for your time and energy today.
Thank you for having me, Danny. Yeah, I can't believe it's been 11 months. Feels like longer, though, in a way. Like
Yeah.
a lot has happened. So maybe that's a good thing.
Yeah. A lot has happened, including like a big trip to Peru that we went on last year. So last time we chatted, it was actually about the retreat, but it's evolved since then in the last 11 months in like such big and exciting ways. For me, this is like the biggest, most exciting thing in my life, other than sound. So I'm excited to get into the evolution of the plant more, worry less retreat saga.
Yeah. Have you updated anybody on how the retreat went? Because maybe we have to recap now
Yeah, that's
what
a good
happened
idea.
down there.
Yeah, oh my God. I feel like I'm still integrating it, but we should recap everybody. You go first.
I go first. Well, that was the second year that we went. So this past year, you were assisting me, so you got to see like a lot of the logistics. Like we were trying to organize taxis, I remember, and all kinds of things. And we had like all these notes. And I think like the memories that I have from last summer that really stand out to me are being there early a week and then getting hit by what I usually get hit by, which is some kind of healing Peru crisis. and, but making it through okay and then losing my voice right as the retreat started. On the same day, I think the retreat started, I couldn't talk. And then here are all these people coming from all over the world. We had people from everywhere, and I'm saying hi like in a whisper, like, "Hi, welcome to Peru." And I remember there was somebody there. I'm not going to mention names, but I hadn't met her really, but I knew her husband really well, and he was there too. And I think she thought I was insane because I'm going around whispering. And she's like, "What is this? Like, why is he whispering the whole time?" And I had to do a lot of letting go. I do remember that because it was like a big lesson in control. Like, in the year before and in the way that I like to hold these spaces, I like to get everyone in a circle and do all these kinds of things. And I realize I can't even tell people dinner's at 5:30. I can't even communicate at all. And so I just let go. And I was just like, I just got to practice surrendering and allowing whatever happens to happen. And so those are like there was a lot that happened besides that, obviously, but like it stands out to me that it was a big lesson in just allowing the group to do what it needed to do and not trying to interject too much. And I know your perspective is different because there were times where I was whispering to you, trying to get you to do things. I'm like, I can't talk. Go tell them this. And like the things I wanted you to say are like not things you would normally say. So you didn't want to say it.
Good. It's good lessons for me too.
Yeah.
And we didn't get to really like part of like your magic is you singing with your guitar. So that was a hard part for me. I was like, but luckily I was there early with you, so I did get a little bit of my Hamid fix, greatest hits. Um,
Right.
but
Oh, that's right. Because we had that night where we were all sitting and yeah, I was playing and that was good.
it was so good. I was like, okay, at least I got that. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, but other people didn't know that I could sing or talk. Maybe some of them to this day don't know that I can speak. I don't know. We'll see.
Well, a question about like the sickness and sort of the thing that you go through, and you got sick last time we were there too. So like this is a thing, and we're planning to go up a little earlier this time, so maybe it happens all before the retreat. What do you liken that to? What do you think that that's about?
Well, I've come to realize that for me, it's just the body, my body entering a place of relaxation finally. Like there's a lot of stress leading up to the retreat, just organizing it, just making sure that everybody's there and all the things. And then I get there and I'm like, I can relax now. So then once I relax, I enter this much more parasympathetic healing state, and my body's like, okay, we're going to do all the healing that we've been ignoring while you were totally stressed out. So it did happen the year before, and so I thought, like last year, I thought, okay, I'm on top of this, like I'm going to get through it faster. And I think I did go a little bit earlier, and I really did get through it faster. I was pretty much done. It's just that the voice left at the end. So then I was like, okay, that I didn't anticipate. But I do think it is related to how well we prepare. And, for me, it's just a journey of stress. Like I'm taking, 10 people, including myself, to a foreign country. And the more stressed I am, then I think the more my body needs time to recover from that stress once I enter the place of calm. So this year, we're going 2 weeks early so that I have a full 2 weeks to get through that. I don't know. I don't, maybe it won't happen. I mean, there's been times where I've been to Peru and it didn't happen. So I don't know. And also I've been dealing with health issues, and that's a whole nother story. And so just I think the breathing up there was a real challenge for me. And I just came out of sinus surgery. So some of it was just like I couldn't breathe really well up there. And I think now this year will be totally different experience because I'll be able to breathe and get more airflow. There was a lot of funny instances like when we finally went to the retreat house from the house we were staying in, and then I lost my voice, and Jesusa, who's the lady there, she's very concerned about me. So she started making me teas, and then she told me to take the oxygen. There's like an oxygen tank. And so I just remember like going over there and turning it on and breathing and being like, this feels pretty good. And then later, somebody who knows how to operate the machine came and was like, this isn't even on. I was like, the placebo effect.
That's like
Uh,
one of my favorite pictures of the whole trip is like
it
coming around
wasn't
the
even
corner.
working in that picture. I
Oh.
thought it was. Yeah, that was funny. Then I think, I mean, we're jumping all around, but that oxygen thing became just a point of like contact for a lot of people. Like people were feeling weird. They're like, I'm just going to hit the oxygen. But, it was not just me. I think that a lot of people experience these healing crises when they go to Peru. There were people in our group that I think got hit by a healing crisis as well and felt amazing afterwards. It's like just cleared through something that had been stuck for a really long time. And part of that is just that land. I mean, you can relate now, but like when you're there, it's like you're in another world. Your whole vibration shifts, the whole body shifts. You're not even able to describe that to people, but all of a sudden your body is basically trying to acclimate to a totally different vibration. And it's a very ecstatic vibration, like those mountains and everything. And so it's sort of like you're up leveling your vibration. And yeah, there could be symptoms, like physical symptoms that occur. It sounds woo-woo, but actually, I think it's pretty biological. And that once your body then adjusts to that, because it does adjust, you feel amazing. And I know like you get this kind of Peru afterglow that stays with you for a really long time when you come back. And because you're shifted into this different vibration, actually, I think life here is really hard because then you come back to the States and it's no matter what a beautiful place you live in, the vibration here is not the same. And you're hypersensitive to the fact that we live in a really weird environment and there's a lot of issues. And so for the first month coming back, my feeling is like resisting resisting everything here. Like, oh my God, I can't stand it here. I've got to go back. And then there's like this slow process where your resistance fades and you just slowly come back into that. And that's kind of the integration, like the reintegration process. Is that been your experience too?
Yeah, it is so hard for me to come back every single time. I always tell people that is like the real ceremony for me. It feels easy for me to be on the mountain on lots of Huachuma. Like for me, that feels so good. And even just being in Peru in general, and it's so hard leaving. And I remember the last day that we were there, I cried like all day. I cried in the sound thing, I cried at the house, I cried that night so much because I knew I had to come back. And I remember landing in Boston and being like, ew. Like I just the cars, all the skyscrapers, all the advertisements everywhere. I was just like, I don't want to be here. And it was hard for me to like get excited about teaching yoga and even doing sound here. I was just like finding little things to get excited about and trying to not be depressed so that I wasn't in Peru. And then it's like my main focus is like getting back
Hmm.
and seeing what that's all about. And even now, still, it's almost, I don't know, 8 months later, and I've like settled in here physically, but my mind and my heart is so just counting that down the days till I'm back again and flying over the mountains. That's just like my favorite part ever is like going from Lima to Cusco. So I just like dream about that. And I have this feeling there's like this calling. I don't know what else to call it, this yearning and this sort of tether to Peru. And I always like I'm always like I'm going to give it all up and just stay here. And that's how I feel when I'm there and it feels so real and so right. And then I come back and I'm like, okay, I would hurt a lot of people if I did that, but that feeling is very real when I'm there. So I have this idea, this theory that if I just keep going back and keep listening and keep devoting myself to Peru in general and to the medicine, that the answer will become clear to me. And when it's clear, then I feel like I will make the decision if there is one to make. And maybe it's just that I keep going and bring the vibration back here and bring
Hmm.
the medicine and the ceremonies and everything that we experience, bring that back. But even that, it's like, I don't know. I'm very all in or all out, and letting go and things ending, as you know, is very hard for me.
Yeah.
So I wear my shirts. I wear my plant more, worry less shirts, and I stay as closely connected to Peru as I can. My bracelets I've had on for years. I don't take it's like everywhere I look, there's little reminders, like my Chicana necklace and my rings. It's like, okay, I remember it wasn't just a dream. I'm going back. It's all good.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I can agree. I've been looking forward to it ever since I came back. And I remember when we came back, I immediately reserved the house for the next year. I was like, I've gotta reserve the house. You know, it has never been a case yet that it's been taken, but I just thought, yeah, I need to keep going. And then so much came out of that retreat. You know, we haven't talked about all that happened. Of course, we had ceremonies, and those were beyond anything that I've ever experienced. And yeah, maybe you want to share about how you experienced the ceremonies this time, because this was your second trip back last summer versus the prior. Was there a difference for you?
Um, well, I was a little bit more settled in the medicine, and we got to experience a fire ceremony with the group. So that I was just so looking forward to because when you're hiking, there's so much. other going on, so much beauty to look at and to sort of be involved in. But with the fire, it's like you're there, you're with the medicine, you're building a relationship with the fire now and not just the earth. So the fire ceremony was awesome to me, and I can't wait to do that again and to just like settle in even deeper. Um, and we went to Kinsacocha again, which now feels like a special spot. And I kind of hope that we keep venturing back there, either whether it's during the retreat or before. And I found like my feathers there, which felt like the altars were speaking to me. So like after we left Peru, I've been in like this deep study with the altars that we learn when we're in ceremony. And each month I've been really dedicating everything I create, my sound ceremonies, my yoga classes, the music I listen to was like so focused and concentrated on like right now it's water and clarity. So like everything I do, and that's the prayer I'm asking for too, is like clarity. So for a while I've been deep diving into these altars. And on the hike, I was like, okay, altars, I'm back. It's me and you. And during the hike, I found four feathers and there's four altars. And for me, it was almost like this recognition or this acknowledgement from the altars or from Kinsacocha or from the Great Mystery, from all of it. And it just felt so important to me. And there's like I don't know that there's like a nugget or a pearl I could distill it down to in a sentence because the bigness of that recognition was everything. Um, and speaking of letting go, I brought back the feathers and like my dog ate one and I was so upset. I'm still kind of upset about that, but one of my big lessons too was about letting go. So that was like continued after I got home, like learn to let go.
Yeah, well, dog is just reminding us that these things are all in our mind, the meaning we place upon it, right? Because to the dog, it's like, oh, clearly this is something I should eat. And for you, you're like, this is for my altar. You know, it's sort of like a little slap from the universe, like, don't take it so seriously. Yeah, my dog has eaten feathers before too, so I've been through that. But you mentioned Kinsacocha. I don't know if we talked about it in the last podcast, but means three lakes, right? And that place, I do think we're going to be going there again this summer. I mean, it seems to be the launching point for most of our ceremonies, at least to begin there. And it's such a special place. This past summer, we went on the quote unquote easy route that I did not find very easy. But it was a lot easier, I think, than the route we took the prior year, which involved climbing all the way to the top, basically, where there's that plaque that says 4,000 meters or something elevation, and there's no air to breathe. I will say that for me, that ceremony this past summer at Kinsacocha was one of the most difficult ceremonies of my entire life. I thought, like I had been through the healing process and the only remnant was that I couldn't speak. Turns out that's not true. I was still impacted a little bit as far as my energy goes. And I just remember at some point going, I don't think I can move my feet anymore. And then having to ask somebody in the retreat, our friend was like, can you come and hold my hand while we go up this hill and kind of like help me up? um, which he did. And I really appreciated that because I just could not find my body. I was like, I know that I'm in a body. I know that this body has legs that move, but I was so far out of my body. I've never been in that particular state with Huachuma. At the same time, it was absolute heaven and bliss. I mean, I felt like I was in heaven. And every time I would focus and look around, I was just in awe. I mean, there's kids, going with their sheep, like just walking by, wearing their outfits and like playing. And then thinking, this is a dream. Like, this is not real. And there was some absolutely beautiful moments there. But yeah, I think we will be going to Kinsacocha for all of the retreats, I assume. So we'll see what happens this coming summer. But I'm really looking forward to being there. I mean, part of the the best part of Kinsacocha to me is always at the end, where these these people bring out these little potatoes that they grew on those mountains where we were hiking. And I don't know, something about those potatoes, they're really magical.
And the green sauce or
And
whatever
the
it is.
little green sauce, yeah.
I'm so looking forward to seeing those two ladies that set up shop. I have this idea. I'm like, I am going to save all my money and just sit right there with them and pick out all the presents for people and just support Kinsacocha because it just feels like such a special place.
It is, and the funny thing about that is that, they try to sell us the stuff, but we're still really deep in the medicine, like just so deep. And our discernment of what we're buying, I just learned I'm not going to buy anything because I can't even figure out what I'm buying.
Yeah.
And there was someone in the retreat the prior year who bought from those ladies a beanie that says Florida on it. And I thought, where did you get that? I got it from those ladies. I was like, there's no way that that's made in Peru. Does it have a made in China sticker on it? And it's like, well, it's a nice beanie. Yeah, there's so much stuff there to buy. That's the other thing. I think nowadays, I mean, that's a whole different discussion, but I just have to be very diligent not to spend money on everything because you kind of want to buy everything. You know
Yes,
what I mean?
I do.
Yeah, but the ceremonies, that ceremony itself with the lakes, for people that have no concept of what we're talking about, you cannot imagine Kinsacocha. You can't even imagine it. There's no way to take somebody there in description or even in photos. It really does feel like you are in another world, a world that is very different than our world. And you see the people's lives. I mean, we're like kind of invading their life. We're stepping into a Monday at Kinsacocha where the kids aren't going to school, they're herding their animals all day and playing out on the mountain. And then like a lot of what I experience in those ceremonies is just looking at my life and seeing, wow, what kind of life have I lived? When I was their age, I was basically in the school system, which operates a little bit like a prison, where there's bells and you have to go from class to class and you can't get up and you need permission to go to the bathroom. And you are taught in our culture, basically surrender to this system of authority. And then you see these kids and they're just out there with the animals, and that's their school, that's their life. I mean, what are they really preparing for? Because they don't need to learn, the history of this and that. They need to know how to, raise animals for wool and for food. And they're so happy. That's like the biggest thing is like everybody you meet up there, they're just so happy. They're not stressed out at all. They're like, hi, and then we take a lot of our projections with us, of how we would react, and we sometimes project it upon the people there, and they just don't react that way. They don't experience reality that way. So it's not just Kinsacocha, but Kinsacocha, that place that we do those ceremonies, it's not the half of what I'm talking about has nothing to do with the medicine, has nothing to do with Huachuma. It has to do with the mountain, the land, the way that the people are. And a lot of the ceremonies, this is a bigger discussion. I hope we have enough time to just keep going because there's so much to talk about. But there's a lot of focus on medicines these days. Everywhere you look, even in the United States, there's ketamine clinics and there's all this psychedelic therapy happening. And so people that are not familiar with the distinctions between things will lump something like Huachuma into that category. Like, okay, this is a psychedelic, this is for therapy, this is for me to heal all of my traumas, this is for me, and it's all about me. Like, this is me, this is me, this is what am I going to get from these medicines? And then if you go do a ceremony like what we're doing, it has nothing to do with any of that. Like, that seems so strange, actually. And contrasting, because sometimes people are like, oh, I've tried ketamine or this. I'm like, yes, that's great. That has nothing to do with what we're doing. Sitting in a office with a therapist and just ruminating on your problems in a disconnected way and kind of processing them, that's very different than walking in the mountains amongst people that are teaching you. The people are teaching you about life without even talking to you. You're just seeing them. And the mountains are teaching you about life. And your struggle, which it's real, it's really challenging to be up there, is teaching you about how you relate to everything. Like, what I remember most is like each step is incredibly difficult. At the same time, that teaches you about how you're living your life. Are you willing to take difficult steps? And can you find that beauty in the difficult moment? Can you really feel it? Can you feel that ecstatic nature of the whole thing? And it's such a profound experience that there was a time where I was like, I'm not even going to talk about Peru to anybody. Because when I had that experience for the first time, which was many years ago now, I felt like every time I would try to talk about it, it just sounded silly. It sounded silly. And I realized, like, there's really no way to fully convey this. And I think in the tone of my voice, maybe I can convey a little more, or like in some of the music, that I sing or something like that, or, taking people on hikes here in the States can kind of give them a glimpse, but even that is not the same thing. And so it's really just it's a very profound experience. And we did two types of ceremonies this past summer. We did the hike ceremony, which I don't know if we talked about it, but yeah, each ceremony is surrounding four altars, and you were speaking about the altars. The altars are a very deep exploration. The more you start working with these altars, and they seem very simple, the first altar being the altar to the east, and gratitude and welcoming the sun, and there's an animal associated with each one. It seems very like surface level, like you can intellectualize it, but then you start working with them, you start to, you know, just allow them to metabolize in your system over time, and they reveal a lot. And I think that that's a very hard thing to describe to people too. Because when I talk about altars, people think, oh, this could be triggering. I used to go to church. I don't want to pray. Like, I just want to take the medicine. Just leave me alone. And it's like, no, you don't understand. Like, this is a very different type of experience. A lot of people have worked with Huachuma too, and they've never experienced altars, these kinds of altars. And so we did the mountain ceremony that revolves around the four altars, but we also did the fire ceremony, which you were mentioning. It's like when you're on the mountain, then you have to deal with everything that I just described, which is the kids going by with the sheep, and it's just magical, and there's all the mountains around you. And then with the fire ceremony, we're just sitting around a fire. There's no real place to place your attention other than inside yourself and at the fire. There's no other distractions. And you loved it. I can tell you loved it. The fire ceremony, though, for some people was incredibly difficult, I will say. I have never before taken first timers to a fire ceremony. Last summer, I don't know what possessed me to do that. fire ceremony really is, I think that the hikes themselves are PhD level. I mean, there's many people that work with Huachuma that are facilitators that I think if they did one of those hikes, they would be humbled to the point of maybe never serving medicine again until they figured out what the heck just happened to them. That's how big those ceremonies are. And I think there are people that have gone now that can understand what I mean, which is like, oh my God, this is a whole nother level. This isn't just like some casual thing. Then you take the fire ceremony and it's 10 times that, as far as your skill level needed. And I think people also have an assumption that plant medicine is for everybody, it doesn't require skill. That isn't true. Nobody would go and think that they could do what a Buddhist monk who's been meditating for 40 years can do with controlling their consciousness and being there. So I don't know why people have the assumption sometimes that they can just go take some plant and they're going to be a master of dealing with that and understanding how to dance with it and work with it. The fire ceremony really brings that out. Like the people that think that they've mastered it, that's a good place to go to be humbled and be like, okay. And I was super humbled by it. Again, I mean, I love the fire ceremony personally, but each time I do the fire ceremony, I remember how hard it is, how difficult it is. And, you and I were talking about this. I haven't made final decisions, but I don't believe that this upcoming retreat will involve a fire ceremony because we do have some first timers coming, and we can take a poll from the group maybe, but it just seems like a lot to put people through, if that makes sense. I mean, definitely the feedback I got was like, that was the hardest thing I've ever done in my entire life. Not just like hardest thing I've done as an adult. It's like, no, going back to the entire life,
Oh
but
man.
really beneficial. I mean, really beneficial.
I remember coming out of the temple and it was like day. So we're up all night. So it's like sundown to sunup. So you're there in the, oh my God, and the stars are amazing. But I remember coming out of the temple in the morning and seeing the mountain right there and seeing the earth. And it was like I had never seen the earth before in my life. It was like the first time I was laying eyes on all of this stuff. And I was like, oh my God, this is so beautiful. It's like I'm not worthy of like taking this in. That's how Wachuma makes me feel with the land too. It's even when we're on the hikes, like towards the end of it, I'm like, I almost can't comprehend the beauty that I'm seeing. Um, and well, something I wanted to say about you asked me how I experience the ceremonies now. I remember feeling so present and so just there. Like there were no thoughts, no emotion or anything. And I used to like judge myself for not crying and not kind of going into this whole process during, but it almost feels really quiet inside and like I'm just here now and just very present with everything and feeling the medicine and kind of connecting to the land and the prayers and yeah, I and maybe that's like the settling in of it or maybe I need to keep going deeper. Well, I'm sure it'll just evolve as it evolves, but it's my favorite. It's all my favorite stuff ever.
Yeah, I think we talked about this before. My first experiences with these master teacher plants was with ayahuasca, and I didn't experience Huachuma until, well, it was in the same year that I experienced ayahuasca. I experienced Huachuma, but now in retrospect, what I experienced was really mild, I would say, because it was sort of a light dose. And the way it was facilitated didn't really open up anything. And I didn't understand Huachuma. I didn't really get it. I felt that heart opening. It was beautiful, but I didn't feel like I was getting the getting the point of it. Like it was almost like and I remember saying to the facilitator, like, I don't really get the father medicine. That's what he called it. I was like, I don't really get the father medicine. It's beautiful, and also I don't know what benefit it's got for me. And he just said, well, yeah, just ignore the father then. Even when you take father, just pray to the mother medicine. And I was thinking, well, that sounds like something very profound, but over the years, I've realized that that's not that helpful of a statement and it's not that profound. It's just one of these thought terminating cliches, which means like it ends the discussion. It's sort of like he didn't want to talk about it. So he just gave me something that sounded profound so that I would shut up and not talk about it. There's a lot to be said about that facilitator. I don't work with him anymore. But it wasn't until I found Miguel, who you now know and who we go to for the retreats, that I understood what Huachuma was all about. I mean, you can't just take Huachuma. I've had lots of people over the years who try this. Like, let's say they go to a Huachuma ceremony, they experience something very profound, then they're like, well, I want to get some Huachuma. I'm going to make it. I'm going to buy it online. I'm going to take it. And they do. And nothing happens. I mean, they may feel a little bit of like that euphoria, but it's like they're not experiencing what they experienced in the actual ceremony. And what I realized with Huachuma is it's not about the medicine. It is about how the medicine is held, how the ceremony is facilitated, the energy of the person who's facilitating it, and the setting. And all of it has to come together. And if it doesn't all come together, then you don't have that experience. And that's the part where I realized Huachuma is actually a much more advanced medicine in many ways than ayahuasca. Ayahuasca, often, I think, you don't have a lot of agency in that process. Most of the instruction you get from people that facilitate ayahuasca is take it, tune into the sound, tune into your heart, but also let go, ask questions, let the medicine guide you, let the medicine take you where you need to go. Doesn't matter what you want, ayahuasca is going to give you what you need. That's a very disempowering thing to say to somebody, don't you think? I at the time thought, no, this is really amazing. Like, I don't actually have to know what I'm doing. I can just drink the ayahuasca and, it's going to do everything. That isn't true either. I've realized you really do need to know how to work with ayahuasca. But with Huachuma, it's much more empowering. It's much more like, here, you take this medicine and you pray with this medicine and you sing with this medicine and you walk on the mountain with the medicine and you're going hand in hand. And the more you give, the more the medicine gives. The more you put into it, the more you're rewarded. That is a very different experience where it's encouraging us to take action. It's encouraging us to be active participants in the ceremony. And like the ceremony, when Miguel does it, he usually says at the end, he's like, I feel like we made a really good prayer. And what he means is that all of us went there on the land, we blessed the land, and we prayed together, and we created the ceremony together. There's no outsider. We're all creating it. It's a co-creation process. And to me, that part of Huachuma is so amazing. It really is about bringing people together, harmonizing us with the environment, the land, harmonizing us with the prayers. And I don't know. I've come to the opinion, and this is just where I'm at in my own journey, that Huachuma is much more powerful than ayahuasca. Nothing wrong with ayahuasca. It's a beautiful medicine. But Huachuma is way, way more of a powerful medicine. And as far as the effects go, too, I mean, the physical effects, how long it lasts. I mean, I was feeling it for months. months after. That's ridiculous. Not in a bad way. I was feeling it in a good way. Um, I don't know what your feeling is. You've worked with ayahuasca too. Sometimes people are wondering, like, are you going to Peru? Are you working with ayahuasca? And I'm like, no, we're
Yeah.
not working with ayahuasca.
Yeah, that's I have a very similar feeling about all of it. And I did like a series of ayahuasca ceremonies and then did a Huachuma one. It was just one after like three or four ayahuasca and I was like, Huachuma is the medicine. And then did peyote and I was like, peyote's kind of right there too. There's something about this cactus consciousness that I just so resonate with and wasn't getting a whole lot out of the ayahuasca, even though I had done a series of ceremonies probably at the end of the 2 weeks. I don't know, it was maybe like six of them or something, five maybe. And I just had this like knowing that Huachuma is what I'm going towards. And as far as the after effects of Huachuma, I still feel like I'm integrating 2023 ceremonies. And what I've been feeling into lately is like how a cactus grows is like slow and kind of methodical. And I've been feeling it enter my life that way too. So it's like we have these big ceremonies and like you get these, beautiful insights, but then you come home and for months life is starting to like change around the vibration of this medicine. And like even now I'm going back soon. And I'm like, am I ready to flip everything on its head again? Like I feel like it's still happening and like now these different things are falling away that I no longer resonate with and it's like I almost can't tolerate things that are not in alignment with my heart. And it doesn't happen right away. It took me like 4 or 5 months to actually come to terms and make the decision. So I've been just like interested in the way that Huachuma grows into your life like a slow cactus. And it probably will for years, probably forever. Just like the reverberation of the prayers, like I can still hear the rattle and the songs and just tap into that feeling and the way that I felt is just so good. And I'm great. I'm glad that you started to talk about ayahuasca because something I was going to ask you is not to compare the two, but to talk about it because ayahuasca gets all of this sort of hype around it. And and it does have its beauty and its place. But I think Huachuma is like so under talked about and sort of underrepresented and which is why I'm excited and I don't know when we can enter this but the Huachuma Foundation and I remember you've been talking about this for years and you saw an ayahuasca foundation and you're like, why is nobody talking about Huachuma in this way? So that's something that's developed since we came back last time. But I kind of wanted to talk about that, the birth of that, and also a lot of people ask me when I start talking about Huachuma to them, they're like, "Oh, is that like that peyote?" Peyote is what I've heard. And I'm like, well, in some ways, yes, but in some ways, no, it's different. And when I say I'm going to Peru, people always say, "Oh, are you going to work with ayahuasca?" And I don't think they realize that there's like a jungle part of Peru and then you're up in the Andes part of Peru. So I know I just kind of said a lot, but take it
Yeah.
like,
Well, just to the first thing you mentioned about, you're scared to go back in a way because then it's like, oh, you got to go through this whole process. I will say to you and anybody else who's in that position, it's less and less each time. The more you start to listen to your heart and you're living your life in a way that is true to who you are, the less it is upsetting or unsettled by, experiencing something like that retreat. Like I can go there and I come back and I'm like, I'm not about to just upend my life, right? I still experience a lot of what you experience, which is like I'm there and I'm like, I could live here forever. And then, the practical parts of me are like, but maybe that's not my gift to the world. Who would I really be helping if I were here? There's enough people here doing sound. There's enough people here working with medicine. Do they really need me? No. And then I tap into, my contribution back in the United States and like my place. And I always think of it like I service this area, like I'm in service to where I live. And I feel as though some of the karma that I have is like that, which is I need to be here doing these things, and that fills me up. So just if there's any if there's any worry, I think it gets easier the more you start to align. And the way that I think what Shuma teaches us is that, which is just the alignment. Like, the cactus itself is just kind of shooting for the heavens there. Like it's a tall cactus, like reaching for the sun. The more we start to have that, where we're just embodying who we are, I think the more stable we are too. We're not unstable, destabilized by these processes.
Mm.
I also do think, I don't want anyone to think that's listening that I am dissing ayahuasca. I love ayahuasca actually. What I realized with ayahuasca for me, and I think for a lot of what's happening with just the scene, the energy around plant medicines, is that ayahuasca is what's necessary for a lot of people because it's the true sledgehammer approach. It's like you got yourself into this life. You didn't even realize what you've done, and you've made all these decisions, but people don't know. People don't even realize, I think, that their life is a product of all the things they've dreamed into being. Everything in your life, you dreamed it, you brought it. People think that that's some kind of, there's some mystery to it. It's like, no, it's you. And ayahuasca, I think for people that are still on that level of consciousness, that they don't realize that they're creating their reality, they need the ayahuasca to come and be like, boom, you are creating your reality. And here, let me show it to you. And it is not an easy experience often. And it involves a lot of pain. And a lot of what happens with ayahuasca is like a pain experience, like where you grieve or you purge. And it's a cathartic thing. And for people that have been relatively numb, now, most people would never say they're numb, but they are in a way. They just don't know the possibilities of what it means to feel. Ayahuasca shows them, here, feel something. Like you're going to feel this. And it doesn't require that same dance as with Huachuma. So I think Huachuma is going to be, there's all these people that are working with ayahuasca. And at some point in time, if the ayahuasca works, they may start to see Huachuma in a different light and realize, oh my God, Huachuma is the evolution. Huachuma is where we go once we've done all of that cathartic healing. Because Huachuma is not about that. It's about where are we going to plant our seeds? Where are we going to go? What are we going to do? How are we going to create our lives? What are we going to dream into being now that we have this knowing that we are doing it and we are praying it into our lives? What are we going to do now that we know we have that power? That's very empowering, but it's still, there's an evolution and everybody will get there. Or some people won't get there. And I don't mean it in any disrespectful way. So there's some traditions with ayahuasca that I think are beautiful because it's like their church. They're not going there to try to heal. They're going there to celebrate, to sing, to connect with God. That I resonate a lot with. And if the medicine is what opens the heart in order to do that, amazing. It's more just this kind of what I hinted at, where there's this Western healing mindset and thinking like, which is the most powerful medicine to heal me? There's a lot of people moving to ayahuasca in that mindset. That's a very different mindset than I'm going to take this and sing and talk to God. I'm going to take this and try to heal a lot of traumas. So those people that even have that mindset, that's where they should go, because Huachuma isn't about that. Huachuma is not going to say like, come here, yeah, I'm going to show you everything. No, you need to be in a certain place already to meet Huachuma where it is. It's only going to meet you where you are. So they're just very different. And you mentioned like people think of Peru, they think of ayahuasca. Well, it's all the documentaries are about ayahuasca. And I think people fetishize like the purging and all that, and it's a little bit out of hand, to the point where the average person has now heard of ayahuasca, but what they've heard is that it makes you poop and puke and see things. And that's a real disservice to that medicine too. But ayahuasca is from the jungle. It's from, this very different environment. And then when you get to the mountains are all about Huachuma. I mean, nowadays you can drink ayahuasca up in the mountains, but people need to realize that that is no different than drinking ayahuasca in New York. I mean, there's no ayahuasca growing in the mountains. It's being brought in to an environment where it is not native. That's different than Huachuma. Huachuma will grow up there. And I think it's the energy of the Huachuma cactus in the mountains is exactly the right energy for a medicine. I mean, it just perfectly blends with that environment. I have been to ayahuasca ceremony in the Sacred Valley up in the mountains. I hated it. And I've been to, I don't know, thousands of ayahuasca ceremonies. It was nothing about the medicine that was wrong with it. It was beautiful medicine. It's just the wrong medicine. I just thought like, this is the wrong medicine. Why are we huddled around puking? We should be outside with the birds or with the stars or with the fire. I remember that ayahuasca ceremony, they allowed us to leave and there was a fire outside and all the dogs were freezing, so they were sitting around the fire. So I just spent most of the night outside the fire with all the dogs that were trying to stay warm. And to me, that's like heart medicine. I'm like, yeah, dogs, fire. But, I'm getting a little distracted here because I don't remember the thread of where I was going. Can you guide me back in any way?
Well, I do. There's something I want to say about Huachuma up in the mountains and how it all kind of works together. Like with the land and the prayers and the ceremony, and like something definitely is happening, and it's very different than doing it anywhere else. And sometimes when people tell me that they're going to Sacred Valley to do ayahuasca, I feel bad in a way. I feel like they're kind of like missing out on um, like the beauty that's available there through the Huachuma. But because ayahuasca has this popularity and sort of this pull towards it, yeah, people are like leaning into that medicine. But I was just asking to talk about ayahuasca, not so much versus Huachuma, but just in conversation about, yeah.
I remember where we were going now.
Okay.
So I did go to the jungle and do an initiation process with the Ayahuasca Foundation.
Oh, nice.
Well, I'll say it this way. The Ayahuasca Foundation sent us to a center there because Ayahuasca Foundation is a big thing. They have several retreat centers that they run. They also do research where they're doing studies with ayahuasca. It's founded by this guy, Carlos. He's amazing. And I really admire him for creating this whole thing. But they also have this niche where they do these initiations. Now, the initiation is not done by them. It's done by a curandero named Don Enrique. And he has a whole center called Incancana. Now, you can go to Incancana outside the Ayahuasca Foundation too, and essentially do the same thing. The problem is there will be no translator, and there won't be explanation because he doesn't really do a lot of explanation. So the thing that the Ayahuasca Foundation adds to this process is that they have like a couple of people that are like facilitators that when you're not working with the indigenous process there, they're giving you explanation of what's happening. And you get more translation and you get more instruction. So it's kind of a great program because it makes it less scary. Like you're not just dropped at this place. And this place in Cancana, I don't know if it's changed anymore, but it is awful. Like there's no way that anybody would pay to go there as a retreat. I mean, it's the pits. There's nothing nice about it. I didn't have a stool or a chair. I had nothing to sit on. And it's just not to the least of which is like, I just want to sit. I just remember telling one of the facilitators, like, is there a chair somewhere? Like, can I get a chair for my room? Like, it was that bad. And no, there wasn't. End of the story. But when I was there, I I realized like there's this whole thing that they're doing around ayahuasca, and I didn't hear anybody say anything positive about Huachuma. In fact, the Ayahuasca Foundation facilitators, I talked to them and I said, I want to continue my work with Huachuma, and I also want to go after this. I want to go up to the mountains and work with Huachuma. And I had met somebody in this program who became a really amazing friend of mine who had worked with Miguel and Javier, and he knew of these people. And I was talking to him about Huachuma, and he was like, "You've got to go. If you like Huachuma, you got to go." At the same time, the people at the Ayahuasca Foundation, the facilitators, told me that no, because you've now dieted this plant called Noyarao, you're not allowed to work with Huachuma. There's all these restrictions, in this belief system. And I thought, what do you mean? Like if you would have told me that before I paid $6,000 to come here or whatever it was, I wouldn't have come because my entire plan was to work with Huachuma. And they said, well, I'm sorry, you can't anymore. And then I remember thinking, that doesn't make any sense. So I went and talked to Don Enrique. In my little bit of Spanish that I have, I could communicate with him. And I told him, I said, I want to go work with Huachuma in the mountains. And then these guys told me that I can't work with Huachuma. And then when he told me, he goes, oh, for you? No, you should go work with Huachuma. It's good for you. And then I said, oh, okay. So I'm thinking of leaving early because I want to go do that. He goes, yeah, that's good. I think for you, it's good. And I realized like, oh my God. Anyway, there's a lot of things to be said about the information being promulgated down there. What I learned from that was that I need to trust myself and that nobody else can tell me what's good for me. I did get that confirmation from him. So this is all to make a long story short, because when I left, Ross, I just said his name, but my friend that told me about Miguel and Javier, he came too. He left with me. So we went up to the mountains and we had at least a month up there working with Miguel in Huachuma ceremonies. And we started talking about how the Huachuma Foundation that we just went through, or sorry, the Ayahuasca Foundation that we just went through, we need to create a Huachuma Foundation that's similar, that's doing research on how to work with Huachumas, doing preservation efforts, like how can we take care of this cactus because it's giving us so much. How can we give back? And maybe even do educational courses, like similar things like that. So that was the seed of the Huachuma Foundation, was just like this idea, like, let's do this. And then we talked about it, like we met up in the Sacred Valley again. We talked about it again. I kept thinking in the back of my head, like, okay, yeah, you should do this. And then I thought, there's this thing that's happened to me over the years, which is like when you get a seed of an idea, if you don't do it, somebody else will do it. It's just like that. So I let it go completely because I assumed by now somebody else is doing this. I didn't take the idea when it came. So I think like 6 years after I had the idea, well, it was last summer actually when we were there, then Miguel started talking about how he's been having this vision for the 5,000 cactus garden to preserve the Huachuma cactus. And then I was thinking, oh my God, he's having this vision. I've been having this for years now and not doing anything about it with the Huachuma Foundation. And so I remember I came and I went on the internet and I typed in huachumafoundation.org as far as like the domain name, because my thought was somebody's gonna already be doing this. why would I even bother? And I type it in, it's available. So I thought, oh, I guess nobody's doing this. Let's do it. So that was the seed, and then the the seed has just been planted. I mean, I don't know what it's going to grow into, but the first project has been just since we got back from the last retreat, where we've been helping to raise money to help Miguel finish out this 5,000 cactus garden that he's been envisioning. And we haven't met our goal. I think we've raised close to $14,000. We need about $25,000 probably to finish this thing out. But even despite that, the walls are up. There's people there weeding it. There's going to be soil brought in. So it's still moving ahead. And this coming summer, at least we'll get to be a part of the opening for it, whatever that means. Because in the future, I do think that that can evolve into what Miguel envisions, which is a whole place, like education, programs, all kinds of things to teach people about Huachuma and also to preserve Huachuma. And the Huachuma Foundation, to me, I feel like there's a lot of education that's missing. I mean, we were joking about this, the where now that we started this Huachuma Foundation thing, we're like following all these Huachuma accounts on Instagram or whatever, and they're posting pictures of Huachuma retreats, but the cactus isn't even a Huachuma cactus in the photo. I remember I point out to you, I said, "What kind of cactus is this?" Just quick, and then it's like, how is it that people who are hosting Huachuma retreats don't even know what a Huachuma cactus looks like? And then I told you, I said, I really hope they're not serving this cactus to people. So that's just education. It's like we need step one, what is Huachuma? There's a lot to be learned about this cactus. I also feel like we have the opportunity to help educate people on how to grow it. I mean, we've been doing it kind of within our group here, like all the friends that I have, when they ask me how to grow Huachuma, which is completely legal in the United States, I'm pointing them towards sources other than Home Depot to get really good Huachuma, like real Huachuma cactus. The ones at Home Depot are not that good. And so I can envision people growing Huachuma all over. And one way to preserve this cactus is just to have people growing it in their own house, out, in their yards. And that I think is something that is really accessible and doable. Plus, then there's the opportunity for courses. I have like a push-pull, like I have a resistance with courses. Be Part of it isn't easy to describe. I think for me, it's that I've been a teacher for most of my adult life now, teaching things, and I didn't even understand that there was money to be made doing that until recently when I turned into the internet and people have courses for everything. It's like they got courses and they're ridiculously expensive, some of them. And I'm thinking, I actually haven't paid off my law school loans. I don't even practice law anymore. Now I'm going to invest in a course. And so part of my resistance on courses has just been this overabundance of nonsense courses. Like everybody's got a course. And then I realized, and I actually talking to you a lot has helped me see that, well, my course won't be that. The Huachuma Foundation course will not be a BS course. Like if it's going to be, it's going to be deep. It's going to be the real deal. And so, although there are these kinds of nonsense courses happening and people making lots of money selling nonsense, I don't want that. I want it to be a nonprofit where the money is not going to enrich me. I need enough to eat. I'm not motivated by money. If I had been, I would have been an attorney. I left that over 10 years ago. What I am motivated by is connecting with people and seeing people's lives flourish. And so the Huachuma Foundation course ideas are many. Like we've been talking about it and I have all kinds of ideas. So, this is just one thing that's starting to emerge out of this. It seems much more organic now. I think when I first had the Huachuma Foundation idea, that would have really not been organic. I wasn't ready for it. And now it's pretty organic. I'm just kind of going with it and seeing what happens and being curious about the next steps. But yes, huachumafoundation.org exists, and we're raising money, and you're wearing a shirt that says plant more, worry less. That's our shirt, one of our shirts.
I have them all. So
You
if
have
you
them
need
all.
more, just let me know.
There's a funny story behind that shirt because in the retreat, not last year, but the year before, I remember showing up. I hadn't seen Miguel in 4 years, I think, at that point. Because from whenever the 2020 COVID stuff started, I just didn't go to Peru. Peru actually went through a really tough time with lockdowns and all kinds of nonsense. So I hadn't seen Miguel in quite a number of years. And I show up and he's got a hat that says, pray more, worry less. And I thought, there's no other hat that is more appropriate for this man. So then when he started talking last year about planting the Huachuma and how this is going to help, in preservation and everything, I was thinking, pray more, worry, plant more, worry less. It just kind of flowed perfectly into his mantra. And so those are, yeah, I kind of like that shirt, and I like that we have that little slogan.
It's so good. It's the best. I remember Miguel telling us the story about his vision for the sanctuary. And I think the medicine told him, I don't know if he was facilitating a ceremony or in his own ceremony, but he got the hit. He's like, you need to plant more cactus. And he like looked around. He's like, but I have all these cactus here. And the medicine was like, no, more. No, more, bigger. And he's like, oh, more. So he's like, I don't know where I'm going to do it. I'm just going to put out the prayer. And then eventually he got that. And then we started this whole thing. So it's really cool to see how he just kind of keeps following the prayer and the vision and the hit from the medicine or whatever. And to see it come to fruition and the walls are almost, or they're probably done now. And then it's like happening. So for me, it just feels like a huge milestone, and it feels so exciting to be part of something that feels so much bigger than my own personal ceremony or even a retreat. It just feels like something that could live for so many generations and be so helpful to this like medicine in general and to the spirit of Huachuma. It just, for me, it does feel like a natural evolution, but it feels like a big step for the Huachuma Foundation, but even for what it means for the future of the medicine.
Yeah, I remember that story. There's this belief, and I actually was part of this belief system until Miguel really brought me up to speed on it. But there's this belief that I think is common in the plant medicine world that Huachuma is prolific and there's plenty. You had mentioned peyote before, and I think this is where it kind of dovetails in. Peyote is a cactus that is native to North America, and it used to grow abundantly from like the south of Texas, and it goes all the way through Mexico, its territory. But in the 1950s and 60s, it just got over harvested here, and it's a very slow growing cactus. It was added to the list of endangered plants. It's very protected. In the attempts to protect peyote under the US law, they made it illegal to own and sell, which you don't have to be a genius to figure out is not a way to protect a plant, because if you can't buy it, plant it, and own it, you can't regenerate its population. So at the same time, the government was like, it's endangered. Okay, and you can't buy it, plant it, or sell it. It just pushed it to essentially extinction in the US, other than in private collections, people that have greenhouses, people that are growing it. And those people are operating under religious exemptions that were granted essentially to work with peyote. So a lot of people turned to Huachuma, I think, because Huachuma is a very fast growing cactus, unlike peyote. Um, it grows very quickly and it grows abundantly in a lot of different environments. It does grow in the US too. This is a whole nother segment to it, but there's many different subspecies of Huachuma. The thing that is grown in the US that most people have if they have Huachuma is something that we refer to as PC or predominant cultivar. And this is a clone of a plant that was brought, I think, in the 1920s or 1930s to Southern California. And it is infertile. So every plant that everybody has is actually a cutting from the original plant. So if you think about it, this one plant was brought and it is everywhere. It's the same plant. Imagine like a super species like Dani, like we cut off your arm and you're growing arms all over the place. Like this is what they've done. So that particular species, and they sell it at Home Depot, they sell it at garden centers, are all cuttings from the original plant now spread over 100 years. That plant does not work for making medicine. It is a ornamental plant. You could make Huachuma medicine from it. It would require 4 times as much cactus, and it's not very strong. And also, it doesn't have the same vibration because the soil isn't the same, everything. So this is a kind of like more information than is necessary for people. But Huachuma in Peru, in the Andes, the Huachuma that we work with is wild harvested. So that Huachuma grows out in nature, not on people's lands. It is like just there. And because there's a lack of restriction in Peru, meaning anybody can kind of just go cut it, guess what? That's what's happening. And the market for it is huge in overseas in the United States. Like there are websites you can go on find online that sell Peruvian Huachuma in the United States. It's very expensive and it's usually like sold as a dried powder. But because of the demand for it, there's a lot of just cutting of the wild ones. And that's sort of what Miguel was hinting at, which is that the over harvesting of the wild ones. Now, the wild one, now that you've had Huachuma, you know that is a very different experience than what they call Huachuma in the United States. That cactus is, it might as well be a different species of cactus. It's not just strong, it's just different. It's a very different type of medicine. So Miguel's idea for this garden was we need to preserve that cactus, the wild cactus, and the many different subspecies of it, because a lot of those subspecies just have no protection now because they're in the wild. So the nice thing about Huachuma is that you can make medicine from it and save a piece of it and then plant that piece, and that piece will grow into something else. So having a dedicated space that's protected, Miguel's going to be planting lots of Huachuma there to preserve these species. And then, you know, the dream would be to have enough Huachuma eventually that instead of getting the wild harvested ones for ceremony, you have enough growing there that you can just harvest from the garden. And then it's a fully sustainable medicine practice. And it's not harming this wild cactus. And so I mentioned that there's this belief, the belief that Huachuma is not at risk comes from this comparison between it and peyote that people have been making. That peyote, no, that one takes a long time to grow, but Huachuma, in 1 year, you can grow a foot of this cactus. And while that's true, because so many people, and even despite the fact that Huachuma is not like ayahuasca, it isn't that well known, it's still being overharvested at a rate that is not sustainable. Now, that I think is one of the reasons why maybe we don't need to spread the word too far on working with Huachuma. And so, like, the Huachuma Foundation is not about educating people to work with it necessarily. We're celebrating it, preserving it, understanding it. And if you want to work with it, yes, but also understand the complexities of doing that, not from this consumer mindset, like I can just buy it and take it, and I don't care where it came from, and I don't care what harm that's causing. A lot of, it's hard when you start to see like how complex all these systems are, and there's a complete disregard for that. I have people message me too, friends, they don't know any different. And they're like, where can I buy some Huachuma? It's like, well, I'll tell you, but also like that is seems very consumptive. Like, where can I buy it? Where can I get it? It's like, yes, we can get it, but I want to make sure that if you're getting it, you understand that this has an impact on another country. It impacts the people who picked it. It impacts the people who, shipped it. It impacts the earth. Like, we just need to understand that our footprint is a little bit bigger than we think. And I think once we can do that, then we actually feel more connected to the world, because a lot of what ails people is this disconnection. And then we foster this disconnection by disconnecting ourselves, like just ordering everything on Amazon. It's like we don't care where it was made, we don't know anything about it. So we're just reinforcing this disconnection. Whereas if you start to work with a plant like Huachuma deeply, then you can understand where it's growing, where the medicine came from, everybody that touched it. We actually made some of the medicine when we were there. You are more connected, and the more connection is what we need. Everybody's seeking connection. And so that's kind of like the theme of what Huachuma Foundation, the energy behind it, which is like, let's connect, let's be more of a community around this versus just networks where we can find our resources and get our needs satisfied. That's really not that appealing to me.
Mm. Yeah, it feels like what you're saying is like deepening the relationship with the medicine itself. And we got to do a little bit of this last time when we got to make and cut it and feel it in our hands and like do the whole thing beforehand. It was almost like the Huachuma Foundation started to be born before it was like a set idea and like website. If I think back on the retreat, I was like, oh, cool. We got to go a little deeper even than the first time. And then we sat in circle in our integration ceremony, the sun ceremony that we did. So it just kind of felt like it was starting to birth. And now this time it's probably going to be even deeper of a relationship now with the land where the sanctuary is going to be, and maybe we'll get to sort of make and cut the medicine again. For me, that was like such a cool opportunity to be able to really be hands-on with the cactus, all slimy, and just really being in there with it and watching it boil. And for me, the process of making it is like so amazing and so important. Yeah, so anyway, I'm really excited for what you're doing. And I love the education part of the Huachuma, well, of any kind of medicine. I feel like it connects you even deeper. Like sometimes on our calls before the trip, you talk about the conquistadors and what they did, and then you bring us into the altars a little bit and sort of like you cultivate a little bit of a connection with the plant before we get there and what it's been through. And
Mm.
so I think that's a really important aspect of going to meet the medicine in Peru. I have a question. Is it native there or does it grow natively other places or?
It's native to the highlands, which are a little bit lower than where we're staying in Pisac. So I think the elevations it likes best are like 4,000 feet to 7,000 feet. When we're up there in Pisac, we're at like 10,000 feet. It grows well up there. One of the issues that is being addressed in Miguel's garden is that the soil up there isn't ideal for it. So he's going to have to, improve the soil. But it is all over. There's all these cactus there. Like when you go on those mountains, those are not Huachuma, but they're related. Does that make sense? You see all of these very similar types of cactus. They're not used for medicine. Some of them have medicine in them, some of them don't, but they're not actually Huachuma. The ones that we use, they're coming from further away from that area in the Andes, though.
Okay. Do you have any like, and you could be just going with the flow and seeing what it's going to bring to you, but is there any sort of visions that you have for the foundation or a place that you would like to see it go or like a center, or is there anything that you foresee?
I foresee a lot of things. Like one of the things that I mentioned is educational programming. Uh, I've realized this about me, and I was telling you this before. I don't mind working with true beginners. I don't mind it. I mean, I like teaching people from step one, but I think my bigger gifts are working with people that have solid foundations. So, like in the example that I was giving you back then, it's like when I do my sound trainings, I like working with the beginners, but it takes a lot of effort to take a first timer to a level of basic competence. But if I have somebody who's got basic competence, then I can take them to expert, with that same energy. And I feel as though there's opportunities with the Huachuma Foundation to have different types of educational programming. So one of them I was thinking you would be in charge of, which is the more beginner oriented courses for people that want to understand this plant, every aspect to it, understand how to grow it, but also understand how to work with it as a medicine and understand, a lot of the energy behind how you approach it as far as ceremonies go, because it's very different than other plants. But then I envision more of like a practitioner level course. Part of the issue with practitioner level courses that I found is that a lot of practitioners have a massive ego. That the people that really need to know and really need to understand this are the last people that would want to admit that they need to learn and understand it. So there's kind of a challenge there on seeing like if there are enough open people. I do think there are. I think there are people that know a lot and are wanting to go deep. And so I do envision courses, they could be partially online, but culminate with in-person experiences. Like there are certain places in the US where we could possibly work with Huachuma in a legal way. Places like Colorado have some frameworks that we could explore. There's places that have decriminalized plant medicines that, as far as being a nonprofit organization that's doing a course, we wouldn't be charging for the medicine, and a lot of those statutes really just involve non-commercial use. So, the decriminalization statutes, as long as you're not buying, selling, or charging, then you're able to work and assess in essence without law enforcement being an issue. So I do envision possibilities of having online educational courses, group containers, things like that, where we get together in person and we'll actually work with the medicine then in those contexts. Whether it's on a facilitator level, like learning how to facilitate and hold space, which is a whole science and art that can't be done in like a 20-hour course. I mean, holding space is a very, very deep thing. I mean, it would be silly to think that you could teach somebody very quickly. But for the longer types of programs and maybe some mentorship programs, that might be something that we would explore. And then coming to Peru, I do think that anybody that No, I'm just speaking to the practitioners, people that fancy themselves practitioners working with Huachuma. They need to go to Peru. Well, they could go to Ecuador too. They need to go someplace where the cactus is native to. And they really need to have a foundation by creating a relationship with somebody there. Like like Miguel, for instance, who's our teacher basically. They need to have that. If you don't have that and you're just operating on your own, you have no guidance. You have no barometer. I've seen this, like I mentioned, this person that served me Huachuma that said some things that I don't view as very helpful. He has no guidance. And he's older and he tends to get reinforcement because he's successful. So when I was an attorney, I used to notice this a lot. Like I still notice it and laugh, but back then I noticed it more in frustration, which was that like I was a really good attorney, and I'm not just saying that. I mean, I was top of my class. I was the only one hired from UCLA to go to the best firm in LA. I clerked for a federal judge. Each judge gets over 800 applications for one spot. Only the top 1%, less than 1% of law students get those opportunities. And then I was known as like an amazing writer because being a lawyer is all about your words. It's how can you convince the judge by reading something to side with you. It's a form of manipulation, but it is also about persuasion and how clear you are. And I was really good. And I noticed that there were billboards everywhere on the freeways for attorneys. They would say, like, in a wreck, need a check, call this guy, or call this guy. And I know that those are the worst attorneys, the worst attorneys. None of them are good. And I don't even mean good. Like a lot of them, if you look at their history, they've been sanctioned by the bar because they're bad. Like one guy here, his name was Jeff Phillips. He lost his license because he was so bad that he hired another guy with the last name Phillips to take over the law firm so they didn't have to change the billboards. They just changed the fine print. So it's like, that's how bad these guys are. But they don't know that they're bad. They think they're great. They think they're the best. Why? Because they make money. The money is the thing that tells them they're a good lawyer. They're like, I'm making money. I must be an amazing lawyer. They don't realize that if they were actually smarter, they might make a lot more money for their clients. They just don't know. And in the plant medicine world, not to circle around, but that is like similar. Like if people are successful, like this person that I'm referring to, because they're making money and people are coming, they think they're good. I do think that you have to have humbleness with plant medicines. Every time I go to Peru and I'm in ceremony with Miguel, the first thought I have is, there's no way I can lead ceremony. I'm not good enough. That's the first thought I have every time because every time I go, he's way better than he was the prior time. I mean, you may have seen it too, but when I first met him, I thought he was insanely good. He was so good. And then I, studied more with the altars and really tapped in. And then I felt like confident enough to like do it. And I felt like, okay, I'm doing it. I'm doing it. Then I go and I see him and he's way ahead. Like he's gone to the next level. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm humbled now. I need to go back to the drawing board each time. And this is all related to the fact that I said anybody that's facilitating this needs to have that. They need to have somebody that they go to who humbles them. And they can then say, oh my God, I need to put my ego in check for a minute. And I need to really hone my craft, hone my skills, hone my understanding. Because I have seen too many untethered people just get that reinforcement, like the billboard guy. Like, I'm good because my ceremonies are full, but I've been to those ceremonies and they're not good. I don't leave them feeling humbled. I leave them feeling sad in a way. I'm like, you need to go to Miguel. You need to experience what a real ceremony is like so that you don't just sit here and tell people strange things, you know? Anyway, kind of off on a tangent, but part of that to me, if we're going to do the Huachuma Foundation programming, is I think, especially on the facilitator level, we need to have people going to Peru or someplace else and creating a foundation there as well, as far as like support. And I have such a close connection with Miguel. I mean, the first time I met Miguel, I was just like in such resonance with him. And he's not for everybody. I mean, there are people that I've sent to him who have gone to ceremonies and been like, it's not for me. I I say that those people are rare. They're rare, but they exist. But for me, that's kind of the vibration of life that I resonate most with. And the other thing that I look for in teachers, this is kind of a tangent, but also relevant, is like if I'm looking for a teacher for something, I don't just look at what they're saying, like what they can teach me in the curriculum. I look at their life. Because if they're going to teach you this and this is their life, then they're showing you what they're teaching you does. And I'm not talking about those Instagram people who are like, you know, I had a $60,000 month doing this. That isn't their life. I'm talking about like, what is their family life like? What are they doing with their friends? You know, how are they as part of the community? What is important to them? Is making money important to them? Because that's not that important to me. Miguel, it's not that important to him either. I think we struggle in the same way, which is like, once I have enough money to survive, I don't have any motivation to make more because it doesn't really make me feel any happier. It doesn't make me feel any better. I've noticed that that's the same with him. Um, and just like simple things, like with Miguel, you know, this is just celebrating him as a human. It's like he doesn't have any performance at all. Like I've been in ceremonies where his kid walks into the fire ceremony wearing a teddy bear outfit because he needed help on his phone, and it's in the middle of a very serious kind of prayer. And Miguel is just like, yeah, let me see, and fixes his phone for him. You know, it's like I can imagine people here in the States, if their kid interrupted the ceremony, saying something like, okay, no, 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 we're doing something here. Don't come in. And he would never do that. There's nothing more important to him than his kid. Nothing. And when I see that kind of thing happening, I'm like, this guy is teaching you in just how he does things, you know, and that's very important to me. It's like to see every aspect of someone's life like that, and whether they're the kind of person that I want to learn from, or do they embody what they're teaching. And if they're selling me something like this is their medicine, this is what they do, then I want to see like, well, what does it create in their life, right? And part of this idea with the Huachuma Foundation is that, like, really, you know, show people what this can do. Because a lot of my life is just gifted from this work. If I had not met Miguel and found these ceremonies, my life would be very different. I probably would have continued to work with plant medicines, but to tell you the truth, after the ayahuasca foundation experience, I swore off ayahuasca. I was like done with it. I was like, I don't really want to work with ayahuasca after being in the jungle. That was a whole experience that just was not heart opening. It was filled with all this weird beliefs about light and dark and spirit possession and nonsense. I mean, absolute gibberish. And people were buying it and eating it up. And it was an absolute cult experience for me where I was like, this is a cult. Thank you. I'm learning and I'm good. Like I don't want to be a part of this cult. And after that, I thought like, okay, I'll never drink ayahuasca again. And then I found Miguel, went up there. I was like, oh my God, this is why I came to plant medicines. Why do people have to complicate it in such a weird way? There's there's so many weird things in the plant medicine world that I just don't understand. I don't understand them, and I don't understand why people would want them. Like all this weird beliefs, like about spirit possessions and things like that. I understand that these are cosmologies that people hold, but even if you believe that, it's not that helpful. I mean, there were people telling me that I was possessed. My friend Ross, who I mentioned, they told him he was possessed in the jungle, and they were pouring gasoline on his head and all kinds of things. And I remember him going, I just had a rough childhood. And they're like, no, you've got demons. And I thought, there's something about this is just not right. It's just not sitting well with me. And I'm not denying that there's things beyond our perception. But what I've realized from Miguel and that lineage is that your vibration is what matters. You know, if if you're vibrating like that, which is the vibration of fear, guess what? You're going to experience that. And it will be very real. You will be possessed. And the more these practices get compounded of like clearing you and doing all this stuff, the more fear you have. And I've seen people that they got into that lineage and they're still in it. They're constantly battling the dark. They're constantly smudging themselves. They're constantly trying to clear. And there's nothing wrong with smudging. It's just like, how are you doing it? Are you doing it with fear? Or are you doing it with like an awareness that it's love? It's like this other energy behind it. And part of the reason I started to mention this is that I don't want people to experience what I experienced. Like I want to kind of filter and say like, okay, we're only going to go to people who are grounded, who are able to hold space in a way that doesn't put unnecessary weird beliefs into people. I don't want to create courses that end up essentially turning into like a cult thing where, it's like with Scientology. Like they never come right out and say like, okay, this is all about aliens and thetans. They start out by saying it's about healing yourself. It's only after you're in that you find out all this stuff, but then you're already in. So you then start, okay, okay. That's what happened in the jungle. It's like once I got there, they hadn't told me all this stuff. And then you're already in, you're already invested. And that's exactly how cults operate. I don't want any of that for Huachuma Foundation. I want people to have full awareness of everything that they're getting themselves into, and also the empowerment to know that whatever they believe is fine. This isn't about changing how your belief systems are. You can come with any religion you want. I don't care. In fact, Huachuma doesn't care what your religion is. It's not about that. It's not about religion. And the teachers that we'll work with, like Miguel, he doesn't care what your religion is either. He's not going to try to talk you out of your belief system. He's not going to try to tell you that you're possessed by something. He's not going to start doing all this weird stuff. So in a way, I do envision Huachuma Foundation as sort of like a protection mechanism too against some of this weird stuff, if that makes sense.
It
And
does.
people that are not in the plant medicine world might be hearing what I'm saying and going, "What? There's all this weird stuff." Yes, there's a lot of weird stuff, but it isn't universal. See, I've had to navigate that, and you've kind of seen some of it. Once you start finding, your way through it, you realize like it's not all the same. There's aspects of Christianity that are very culty, and there's aspects that aren't. There's different sects. It's kind of like that with plant medicines. There's places that are safe, and then there's places that I view them as unsafe now. Like I wouldn't go there. Like I would never encourage anybody to do the jungle thing that I did. Nothing against the Ayahuasca Foundation, but the program itself and the people leading it were not helpful. And I had to do a lot of healing after that, essentially. Healing from healing, which you shouldn't have to do. And the other people that I've worked with plant medicines, I've had to do a lot of healing around that too. People that have said really weird things to me. And when you're in a very suggestible state, which is what happens when you're in these spaces, even if you don't quite believe what you're being told, some part of you hears it. And then it kind of affects you. So this goes to holding space and just creating safe containers and places that people can go to safely. I mean, most of what I've been doing in the last 4 years has all been around essentially harm reduction, because I do want to work with plant medicines and I do want people to have these experiences, but I also don't want them to hurt themselves. I don't want them to deplete themselves to the point where their physical body falls apart. I don't want them to get overwhelmed psychologically, emotionally, to the point where they can't function. And it's sad that there has to be like harm reduction, because to me, even that term harm reduction implies that the thing is harmful and we're going to reduce harm. I don't think that's true. I think that there are a lot of spaces that are not harmful. I don't view Miguel's ceremonies as harmful. Um, there are ceremonies that I think are harmful. When people tell me about their experiences, sometimes they don't even realize that what they experienced was harmful to them. And, it's like a lack of discernment, because when you're new to a practice or something, you don't really know what's good and what's not good. And so that's part of the education, and just helping people to become really aware and able to discern for themselves and make really good decisions.
Mm. That's something I appreciate about working with you and going to Peru and trusting the whole process, is because you take a very holistic approach, like looking at minerals and the food we're eating and the oil that we're using and who we're going to sit with and where we're going to stay. It's like you take so many different things into account. And so that's why I just have so much trust and I feel so safe when I go with you, is because like everything's been really thought out, even after the fact, and integration calls and preparation calls. And I just kind of have this feeling like if anybody wants to experience Huachuma and do it in a very safe way, to like apply, and even in the application process, like some people you'd speak to and you're like, I don't know if it would be great for you to go, because and that's part of the harm reduction maybe for that person, is you having to turn them away. So I just really appreciate the care that you take in who comes and how you put it all together. And I think that's something that people don't speak about a lot, is even just your work with the minerals has like been so profound. And I think did it kind of stem from looking at plant medicine and how it's depleting people and how people aren't making it out very well, is because they're not looking at minerals?
Wow, yeah. Thank you for saying that. When I was with the Ayahuasca Foundation in the jungle, I noticed, I'm always that like quiet person in the back of the class. I just kind of observing everything. And I was observing the indigenous people, the Shipibo people, and then there were also people in that area. They're not Shipibo, they're from another tribe. And sometimes they would come to ceremonies. And also just seeing these people. There was this banana guy that grew bananas, and I'd walk by his banana farm. It's just in the middle of the jungle, and he had a house. I mean, he built it himself. I mean, it's crazy the way these people live, and amazing too. And he would carry these big bushels of bananas to our camp, and he was at least 95 years old. He didn't have a single gray hair on his head. He had perfect hair. I then was just paying a lot of attention to the indigenous people, and I realized if you look at them, and then I would look at the people that were part of our group, which are Westerners generally, not indigenous. We're talking like 30-year-olds, 35-year-olds filled with gray hair, not looking so healthy. And I realized that there were a lot of adverse experiences of Westerners. Like people would go to the jungle, then come back and not feel well. And they would always be gaslit, like, oh, you broke your diet. The plant is punishing you. Oh, you ate pork. We told you not to eat pork. Oh, you did this. And the cure, the people would say, oh, you need to do more medicine. You need to do more medicine. Now, a little of that happened to me, and I realized like more medicine is making it worse. And that's when I got into looking at minerals. Yes, to make a long story short, the plant medicine world, I think, needs to understand that we are very different in the West because of the depletion of our soils over the last 100 years, the dysregulation of minerals caused by fortification systems. I mean, they've been putting iron in our food since 1939. Iron is not excreted by the body. So guess what? It's building up in the body. Ironically, everyone's told they're iron deficient to have more iron. It can't be true. Where is it? Oh, it's because we've lost copper, we've lost retinol. There's a very complex interplay that's happening that has not happened to the indigenous people there. So when they work with ayahuasca, when they work with these plant medicines, the plant medicines are super helpful for them and sustainable. And then we go and we don't have those outcomes. So that's what's prompted it. And then I had three people that are very well-known medicine people who served medicine all die within a 3-year period. One of them was Javier, but two others as well. And you know what they all had in common? They were all Westerners. They were not indigenous. And as somebody who, at the time, I was starting to get concerned about whether working with plant medicines is actually helpful or whether it's going to kill me like it's killed these people. Now, they would never say that it killed them, but it's clear that that's what's happened, is that if they hadn't been working with plant medicines, I don't think they would be gone. Yet they didn't understand that because of all of the misinformation, gaslighting that goes on in these circles where they're just like, drink more medicine, that's the cure. Not always, actually. Some of these people, when you looked at them, when I looked at them, I was like, they're so depleted. They're so depleted. Plant medicines can be depleting, you know? So yes, I started to get into that, and then, you know, we're working on next level screening. How can we help people from the West understand, you know, what their bodies are doing as far as minerals, so that they can understand if working with plant medicines is going to be helpful or harmful, or so that's another project that's going on the side. And yeah, I mean, it is funny going to Peru. I have to like, we went out and bought coconut oil, and I buy butter and things because they don't know yet. You know, they didn't they didn't traditionally work with or cook with things like canola oil and seed oils. They never had that. But these big companies are also realizing that these poor people up in the mountains don't know the difference. So they're selling them junk oils. So I'm very conscious like that too. So make sure that we're not consuming junk food when we're there. And when I brought those oils to our cook, she's like, "Yeah, these are the good ones." Like she knew it's just very expensive for them. Like so, yeah, I do think that I'm overly cautious on a lot of things. I mean, that is one thing that I'll say. If anybody has made it this far and is considering coming, one of the reasons that I offer this retreat is to provide a safe way to work with these medicines. I mean, we do a lot of preparation, and we do have two Huachuma ceremonies over the course of 10 days. That's enough. That's more than enough. Some of these retreats, I look at the schedule, I'm like, that's crazy. It's like you show up, ayahuasca ceremony. Next day, sweat lodge. Next day, Huachuma. Next day, combo. Next day, second ayahuasca. Next day, Huachuma. I'm thinking, if anybody survives that 10 days, it's a miracle. We go, we enjoy the sacred sites, we go to town, we eat really good food, we relax, we go on the ceremonies, people, we do sound and a cacao ceremony. We do so many cool things and we don't kill ourselves. There's no need to. It's really just a beautiful experience. And we do have a couple spots as of the recording of this podcast, at least. So if anybody's interested, definitely go check it out. Mineralshaman.com. I'm sure you'll put the information in the show notes, but yeah, I do a lot of screening. You mentioned saying no to people. This is the hardest thing for me, but I have had to do it every year, which is that somebody is so wanting to come, and these people are lovely people. I mean, I had somebody recently, I think he's an amazing person. Like, I would want to be really close friends with him, but given his trauma history and things like that, I told him, I don't think this is going to be good for you. I don't want to take somebody who I don't think it's going to be good for them. So I do have that unpleasant task of telling people no. But I'm telling people no out of love and concern, not as a way of rejecting them as who they are, but more just pointing them towards something that I think would be more appropriate for where they're at, or to just acknowledge the limitations of the container. We've had this happen in the prior year too, where somebody was very triggered just in the preparations and was very concerned that they would have a situation happen in the ceremonies, that they wanted to make sure that everybody there was trauma informed. And while I am incredibly trauma informed, and I don't believe that Miguel would ever do anything that was traumatic to anybody, somebody's heightened sensitivity to that is a potential issue. So I remember having to tell that person, I'm really concerned that we won't be able to live up to your expectations. I'd rather be honest and say that, and say, I don't know if I'm going to live up to your expectations. I don't want to disappoint you. Although I think and I believe that we can, I don't know. And I think that was a good decision in that case too. So I will never take somebody who I don't believe is a good fit. So people can reach out and be well assured that they're not going to get themselves into something, because, I do a lot of screening. There's aspects to my questionnaire that's getting way too long. It's getting way too long. But there's a whole funny story with Javier that I told you before about the questionnaires. I'm not yet there. I'm not yet to Javier. Javier, who we're speaking of, is Javier Reguero. He is an amazing medicine person. He wrote a book called San Pedro Huachuma, Opening the Pathways to the Heart. Anybody interested in Huachuma, I recommend you read this book, have it, or listen to the audiobook. Javier is amazing. And Yeah, he tells some stories in there too, similar to what we're talking about, where his questionnaire, actually, he told me this in person. I don't know if it's in the book. His screening questionnaire ended up being like 9 pages long. He was so concerned about people coming that most people wouldn't even make it through the questionnaire. So I've had that recently where people are like, I started it, but I couldn't finish it. I'm like, well, I guess that's a good sign because if you can't finish that, you're probably not ready to go to Peru.
Good
So
luck.
that in and of itself becomes its own screening process.
So speaking of the retreat, is there anything that feels like really alive or what you're really excited for this year, even for yourself?
Wow. Well, last year, we had this whole thing happening where I got super obsessed with buying Javier's old house.
Yeah.
I think I'm over that
I don't
now.
know if I am. The problem is it's so close to where we're staying. So we're like, do you want to go look at Javier's house?
I know. I know. Yeah. What I realized last year when I was there is something about being in Peru really just makes me realize what's important to me. And all I wanted when I was there was my dog.
Oh,
All I wanted was my dog the entire time. I was like, I just want my dog. And I want my home. I was like feeling that, not in a way that I wanted to leave, but in a way that I was like really appreciative of my life. And I think that was really profound for me. And I don't think I had that in the past. And so for this year, I feel super calm and I think I just like my dog. I just want my life, there's nothing there that is going to pull me there. I guess that's what I'm trying to say is in the past, I had this fear like, oh my God, you're just going to sever all your attachments and move here. And that's why I said I got super obsessed with Javier's house. I was like, I'm going to buy his house and I'm going to move here. But the one thing that I kept thinking of when we were there was, I can't because I got a dog. And my dog is more important to me than buying this house and moving to Peru because I will never put him on an airplane and traumatize him by all the things they'd have to do to bring him here. And there's no way I'm giving him up. So once I settled into that, it actually became easier because I was like, yeah, I'm good. So I'm going without that kind of uncertainty. Like I do feel very grounded in my life, and I'm excited to go there and just explore deeper into the things that I already love. Like those mountains. I study those mountains. I mean, I'm just like obsessed with the energy of those mountains. I mean, I don't even understand how to describe it to people, but I'm obsessed with like Pachatusan, for instance.
yeah.
I think about Pachatusan, which is this mountain there. I think about that mountain constantly. Like in my day-to-day life, it's weird. There's something about that mountain, and it doesn't mean that I'm going to give up my life to go live on the mountain. I just look forward. It's sort of like going to see, your best friend that you haven't seen in a few years, but you still have that strong connection with. And then every moment is just amazing because you're just catching up and you're just like in that flow. That's what it feels like to me. And I love seeing people's faces. The people from the retreat that are coming this year, I just can't wait to see their faces. Now, there's like multiple parts, right? And I do mention this in the last podcast, I'm pretty sure, which is that during the ceremony, like the very first ceremony, there's a point where I'll look and people will be looking at me and they will hate me. They'll be like, oh my God, Why did Hamid bring us here? There's no air. What are we doing? How are we even going to climb this mountain? And oh my God, the medicine is so strong. And I know I can see their face, like in my mind. But there's going to be a point at the end of the ceremony where they love me. And they're going to be like, thank you so much. I would never have done this, without you, giving me the nudge. And so I love that part. I love seeing people's faces transform from that, like, what have I got myself into, to holy smokes, my life will never be the same. I know after that first ceremony, for people that have never done that before, their whole outlook on life is going to be totally different. And I'm not saying that people need to change their lives. I don't think people need to. I think you have no choice. After you experience that, you cannot see things the same. There's no way. And it's better. Life is better. No matter how great you think it is, it's going to be even better. So I love that. And I love the time, I look forward to like the fire that we have going at the house. I love that, like sitting around the fire. I love the meals that we have together. I'm looking forward to that, just like the simple things. Being in that house that we stay in, I just love it. And I am indeed looking forward to the new things that we're doing, which are involving the Huachuma Sanctuary. And I'm just curious. I just don't know what it's going to be. I mean, I know we're going to do some things there, and I think that'll be amazing. Because like what you were mentioning with touching the cactus, making the cactus, I mean, the more we can get our hands on the earth and working with this cactus, the more we're creating a deeper relationship. And that's what was hinting at before, is just like more connection to this medicine and the land. And it feels really good. I feel really excited to go. I'm ready. Let's go.
I know. Like, how many days? Oh, I'm really excited this time. And I always have this feeling like, oh, I want to just give up everything and move there. And I think part of that is fear that I won't be able to come back. So I think the more that I go back, the more I'm going to trust that I don't need to sever this life here and I can keep going back. And that's going to be like a thing probably for as long as it can be for me. Um, so I have that feeling too. We'll see. I don't know. It might change when I get there. I like think I don't want to, I think I'm good. And then I'm there. I'm like, shit, I'm not good. I want to move here. Um, yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited about all that. And I love Pachatusan. It's like we get to stay there at La Pacha or the Maha Templo, whatever it's called. And I remember every morning looking at this mountain and just being with it. And then getting to hike it with Miguel kind of before the retreat started. I was like, I prayed for this so hard because I remember you saying that that was one of your favorite hikes. And then when he said, "Oh no, we're going to Pachatusan today," I was like, "Yes!" And I have the pictures in my phone, and I can the way that the clouds are with it, and I have these like different visions in my head about Pachatusan. So I also love this and have this, yeah. Anyway, this relationship with it, and then Lindley, right, is right behind where we're staying. Yeah, and Kinsakocha, like I'm starting to develop this relationship with the mountains in general, like not even medicine involved, but just the mountains or the Apu, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I'm looking forward to the community and making friends with whoever comes because it seems like every time we get to go, there's like these new relationships that get built and formed, and we get to have these beautiful conversations during and then even after the fact. And like I still talk to people from the very first retreat who I would consider like my best friends, and even the second one too. I'm really excited for the sanctuary and to be there and to see it and to just like love it in person. And Yeah, and to continue deepening the relationship with the medicine and the prayers and the altars. Like I am just so in love with Peru and the medicine and the whole everything that surrounds it. Even Pisac and the chai vegano. Like I can't wait to go to our little place there and oh, I just can't wait. So there's so much I'm looking forward to. Um, I don't know. Is there anything else that we should say or talk about? I know that it's been a while. God, I could talk about this forever. So I have to like just be mindful that you also have a life and everybody who's listening have a life because I'm just like through and through. Drank the Kool-Aid. I drank the green Kool-Aid and I'm so in now.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't really have any agenda on what else to say. If people are interested, definitely get in touch and would love to have conversations about it with people who are interested. And the other thing is, we were talking about this. I think there's going to be more than one retreat per year, maybe in the future. So you were mentioning the more often you go down there, the less need you might feel to move there. I think that's true for me too. I do want to spend more time there. Um, I don't necessarily need to live there. I just get on a plane and go. And so there could be opportunities to do more retreats there, which I would love to do.
Me too. I was talking to my friend who's like really tapped in and she's considered like a psychic or a medium and she just is like I see Peru all over you and I'm like yeah because it's all I think about which you probably know and she's like I think you'll be spending a lot of time going there, doing things there, and coming back. And she's like, I think that you're going to spend a lot of time flip flopping, and that will be your place where you go do work and where you take people and then you bring people back here. And I can kind of see that happening now, like with you, the stuff I get to do. And that gave me a lot of peace inside. Like, okay, maybe I don't have to choose one life over the other, and I can do both and be both and spend a lot of time in both. Um, yeah, so even her little reading kind of gave me a lot of hope.
Hmm. Yeah, it's good.
Are we going horseback riding again or are we not doing that?
Oh my God. I I made horseback riding this summer optional, and if you want to do it, you can do it. I didn't even get a horse last time because I'm too big. I
I
got a
loved your
mule.
mule.
The mule was so cute, and the roughest ride, I just felt like I was getting kicked in the crotch repeatedly for like 4 hours, just pow, pow, pow. And then you all were riding the Peruvian paso horses, which are supposed to be like the smoothest ride horse ever. Like it's just super comfortable, like riding on air. And so I didn't have that experience. And so I don't know. I enjoyed it, I will say, but I think that I would have enjoyed just walking next to the horse, like holding the horse, nuzzling the horse. I don't need to be on it, you know? I love horses. Like I just want to be around them, but I think I'm too big to be riding these animals. I feel like I'm crushing them and yeah, so anyway, it's there. It's on the table for anybody that wants to do it. I'm a little bit, I wouldn't say worried, but I think if people decide to do it, they need to understand that they may not feel great afterwards as far as walking. Is that your experience? Like it was a little hard to walk afterwards.
A little bit, yeah, yeah, definitely a little bit awkward for like that the rest of the day and maybe the next day. It was like a little sore,
Yes.
maybe.
Because you're kind of flexing your feet in a weird way and like trying. And my only concern, like if we were doing what we did last time, which was a hike and then the fire, that was perfect because the day after the horses, people didn't have to hike.
Right.
They just sit by the fire. But if we end up not doing the fire and doing a second hike, I would not necessarily recommend people do the horseback riding and then try to hike the next day. It might be a little more challenging. So
Mm.
these are just the way that I think about it, but it is definitely an option. There's so many options there. You know, the things that I really look forward to are the the gong, the gong place, the
Yes.
temple. I love those sound meditations. Kirtan was really great. I love the kirtan. Um, what were we doing?
We went
There
to
are
the
things
ruin
like the ruins.
with
Yeah,
Felipe.
yes, that was new. We didn't do that the prior year. I don't know if now's the time to get your feedback on that. That was like the day after everybody arrived, I was like, let's go to the ruins. And so it was supposed to be a very casual hike, but I think it's pretty challenging, like when you first arrive for people to just hike up there. There's not a lot of air. I thought it was great and long. Like it was a lot long. Things in Peru last a lot longer. Of course, I couldn't speak, so I was trying to whisper to our tour guide, in Spanish, like, we only want just take us to where the trail goes down to the city, less than an hour. And it's like 2 hours in, and I'm going, what are we? He's not even taking us where I said.
You're like, tell him we need to go to lunch.
I was like trying to get your help, right? But yeah, I thought that was beautiful. I mean, those ruins, it's crazy. When you see something like that and you realize this is where people lived, it just changes your whole perspective on the earth. I mean, look at what we live in, it's like these framed houses with what, drywall, and then these people built with stones and just it's insane.
Yeah, it's so good.
And they walked up and down those mountains constantly. Yeah, I think the ruins will be something that we should explore more of. I thought they were really fascinating and amazing. And if we can find that same tour guide, it would be great. He was great. Um, there were other things that people wanted to do, like Sweat Lodge, I remember, or there was a sauna next door. It's like a wood-fired sauna. Part of the reason I didn't prohibit people. I was just like, you may not want to do this because sweat lodge and sauna can be really depleting. And I was just trying to encourage people to rest and like nourish instead of trying to do these really intense things. So I think that was good advice. But but there's ecstatic dances that I don't know if anyone from our group went, maybe.
Mm-mm.
There's ecstatic dance. There's so many things. Like what I realized last trip, just on the last trip, the last group was very different than the group the prior year. The group the prior year was like a family. Like if one person went, everybody went.
Yeah.
And everybody wanted to eat together and everybody was there. And then it was just such a different thing. Then last year, it was like college where everybody was on their own. Or I don't know, everybody was doing their own thing. We had people from the group just making friends in town and like not coming back for dinner and people doing all kinds of things. I was like, I don't know what they're doing. It was a very independent minded group. The other thing about this retreat is, you're doing another retreat there, but I never wanted to do a retreat at a retreat center. Retreat centers to me are kind of like they're like hotels, like you have all your needs provided, and so why would you go anywhere? You're just going to be there. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I think there's a place for that. But what I much prefer is to have people in a place and integrated into the life there. So the way that I have it structured is like we're in this little house, but it's walking distance to town, and we have an agenda. But outside of that, you can do whatever you want. So last year, I think people they were so independent minded that they really took advantage of that. Like people were like getting massages in town or like, like had best friends already and like meeting up with them and like all this other stuff. And, for some people that's what they wanted. And then there were other people who were much more like, okay, I'm going to be with the group, I'm going to be at the house. So it's kind of cool that everybody can do whatever they want. Like if you're super independent minded, you could be on your own and then just come, for the activities. But if you want to be part of the group stuff, then we're there. Like I pretty much didn't leave the house, so I was there all the time, and I like that. I like having the freedom. And then the cool thing is that once you go, it's like everybody feels comfortable. I think people would feel comfortable going back without me or without the retreat. They know what to do. They know how to get around. They know how the town works. And I think that's really cool because it's not just like if we had just gone to a retreat center, the people wouldn't know anything. They wouldn't know how to get around, how to do the town, where the restaurants are. They wouldn't know where the events are, the sound stuff, the ecstatic dance, and so this is really like an education on how to navigate Peru too, where people are feeling super empowered afterwards. Like, I can do this. Like, I'm not trying to be a gatekeeper that, keeps it all a mystery. Like, oh, yeah, no, don't go without me because there's too much to know. I'm just like, no, this is how you do it. You need a taxi, this is how you do it. You message this guy named Toribo Moto or or Richard Moto Taxi.
Richard.
Yeah.
I love I love the way you do your retreat. It feels like home to me. Like being in that house, like I don't know if I would like it in any other house now. It's and Chaska, the little dog, and Abby and Pecas. So it's like there's dogs there on the site at the house, and then we've gotten closer with Jesusa and Choque, and it just feels like home and like the extended sort of a broad family. And then you go stay there, and I really enjoy walking around town alone. So people ask me, is it safe? And I'm like, I feel so safe in PSAC and doing what we do there. There's nothing about that that ever feels unsafe to me. In fact, I enjoy walking around alone and just being in my own energy and being there. So, like, you really empowered me to feel comfortable going there, and like I'm going there soon without you, and that feels kind of weird just because you're not there, like your energy, even if you're at the house. But I think it's good for me, and because of what I've gotten to experience with you, I like know how to take the little motos from this place to that place. I know where to go eat, where it's good, and even know some of the shop owners that can make me this or do this, or where can I find my flutes. And so I think you really empowered me, somebody who's never been out of the country alone before your retreat, to go and feel really comfortable, and even like telling my parents like, no, I'm so good. I'm so good alone. I'm actually looking forward to it.
Yeah, it is a really safe place. And, it's different, like the road has got, dust because it's like a dirt road for part of it. So cars drive by, you might get covered in dust. There's things like that where, I'd say like it's not a safety issue. It's just like you're in a developing country. You have to get used to certain things. But I don't think there's any reason to like fear anything there. People are super helpful. Like if you ever need anything, the locals are super helpful. And yeah, you'll see it's going to be different without me. But in a good way. You'll find your way. And I mean, that you've only experienced Peru the way I like to experience Peru, but now you're going to experience it on this other retreat you're doing at like five-star luxury accommodations. That's good too.
It's good. I'm curious to see how it pans out. I think in my heart of hearts, I much prefer doing it how we do it, but I am curious and kind of excited to see another side of Peru and how it's done that way as well. I think it's good. I think it's good for me to have experience. It's just more information and sort of my own research and development for being in that country. So I think it's good, but I can already feel myself loving the way that we do it. And I love the idea of everybody waking up in the same house in some, we share bedrooms and stuff. So like I enjoy communal sleeping like that, and kind of it's like a big sleepover. Then we all wake up and have a beautiful breakfast together. And now coffee and orange juice is kind of like a staple in my life because of Jesusa. Um, so there's things that I've learned there and picked up that just feel almost like a non-negotiable in my everyday life.
Yeah. Well, we do have the best cook in all of the Sacred Valley. Jesus, I mean, that's the thing I was trying to tell people last year. Everyone want to go to restaurants. I was like, you don't understand. She's way better than all of the restaurants. And it's true. I've eaten at every restaurant. She's way better. And it's just, it's so nice to have the best food, you know. I love that. I like the breakfasts, you know, and the dinners, all of that. It's really good.
And the bread, the little saucers. I can't wait. Oh my God, hurry up, June, July. Actually, it's going to be here before we know it.
It's
Wow.
coming soon. Yeah.
Yeah, April, May, June. Is it 3 months?
3.5 months, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. It's like 14 weeks. It's not that
Yeah.
bad. Hamid, thank you. Wait, one more thing I want to say about the sound. I just remembered. Going to the sound journeys there with cacao has changed my life because I come home and it's what I offer here now, and I incorporate the altar. So for me, like what I do here in the States is like so Peru informed from our retreats. But I remember going to the sound journeys, and some of those were more visionary than even being on the medicine. But the medicine sort of like came to me. And remember my little doodles of the Huachuma Foundation drawing? It said "Bienvenidos." Like there was like roses all over this thing. So I just remember feeling so connected to the sound. And you're my sound teacher, which we didn't even talk about here, but like you're like the first one who like tuned me into sound and flutes and all these things that I do now. And then taking me to Peru has like just blown that open in such a bigger way. So I'm so glad that we're doing something with sound there, because I know it's like such a huge part of your life. And you've told me before that everything comes back to sound for you. So I just think it's so perfect that I think we got to do two sound
Mhm.
gong journeys and a kirtan last time. And for me, that just fits so perfectly because I would imagine a lot of the people who are coming know you through sound that you do in the States. So it just feels perfect.
Yeah, that is the constant thread for me. I mean, we could talk forever about that too, but the ceremonies revolve around sound in a way with the songs, and I really enjoyed. There's I don't want this to come across the wrong way. There's very few sound practitioners in the States that I really enjoy going to their sound things, you know? And a lot of it has to do with the setting. You know, they're not in the best environments, like maybe there's street noise, or it's just, there's always something. And even for mine here, it's hard because there's distractions. But that place, there's a temple called Maha Templo. It is it is like the next level of places to experience a sound journey or a sound meditation. And I love that. I mean, I could do that. I could do that without the medicine. You know, we don't take medicine. We take the cacao, I guess, is what they serve, but it's just so beautiful. And the guy who facilitates it, he's amazing. He's just so good. And he built the gong, and yeah, I love that. The kirtan, I don't know if as a group we'll be able to do it. We did it before the group arrived. You know, I think the issue is just one of timing with the kirtans.
Mhm.
But if I don't lose my voice, then we'll have more sound at the house this year. where, I could play guitar and sing and things like that. We could sing, but last year was all about, I remember thinking at the end, in the integration circle, it was sort of like, it was all about listening for me. Like the whole retreat, I was forced to listen because I couldn't talk. And that's a very humbling experience, just listening and not being able to say what's on my mind. I noticed, though, that I speak so much more than I think because I couldn't talk. I was like, I would be saying something right now. I would be saying something, but I didn't say anything. And I appreciated that. I appreciated like just being able to listen. I think it did refine my listening. Like it really made me tune into people in a different way. I had this experience recently. This is just an anecdote, but it's related to listening. So I had sinus surgery, as you know, and I didn't want to take the drugs they gave me for pain, but I was in a lot of pain. And so I got some Rick Simpson oil, which is a cannabis oil. I have not taken cannabis in years, many years. But I was in such pain that I was like, if I'm not going to take the opiates they gave me, I need to do something. I just wouldn't be able to function. So I took that, but I didn't know how much to take. And I got so stoned that I couldn't talk. And my mom was here, and my mom was just telling stories the whole time. Like I was just sitting there, like I couldn't talk. It felt a lot like being in Peru, like where I couldn't speak. And she was telling these amazing stories about my grandma and about her life. And it was that I was just like listening with such attention to like every word she was saying. Like sometimes you're listening to people and you're thinking about what you're going to say, but because I couldn't speak last summer, I wasn't thinking about what I was going to say. I was just tuned in. And that really changed the way that I listen, I think, to the point where even with this experience where I couldn't talk because I was stoned, which is a little bit different, but I was just like hanging on each word. I was like, oh my God, each word is so profound, and the way she's saying it is so profound that I really feel like that whole experience of listening was really powerful. And I've noticed also that the more that we are around like sound meditations, which is what you were mentioning, like with the gongs and the singing bowls and all of these things, those teach us how to listen. Just being around them, it's teaching us how to tune in because there's no words. It's not a dialogue. It's not this kind of discursive thinking. It's a really different way of experiencing sound. And I hope that we continue to do that. That's my plan. And more sound, the better. Um, and also, I'm always excited. Every summer that we've gone, or every time I've been, I've taken Miguel a gift that is a an instrument. Like I think I took him chimes, like flow chimes.
The
Did I
hanging
take him
garden.
last time? I don't remember what I had Tingsha and some other things over the years, and I got him the perfect gift. It is so good that I am so excited to give it to him because I've used it in ceremony with the medicines and it is amazing. It's the best. So I'm really looking forward to that. And Miguel, he loves little sound things too. He's really into it. So that's going to be fun. Just giving him that. And then I can't wait till he tries it for the first time in the ceremony. He's going to be like,
Oh man, I'm so curious.
yeah,
Wait, don't say, I don't want him to watch this and then blow the surprise, so you'll have to
I'm
tell
not
me.
going to say anything.
No.
No, it's
Okay.
very special. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, it's exciting.
Hmm.
Um, okay. Well, I think I'm out of questions. I don't know if there's
Yeah.
anything else to ask, but I appreciate your time, Hamid, and your energy and the your courage taking people to Peru and sort of following your dream in your heart of wanting people to sit in ceremony with Miguel and the birth and growth of the Huachuma Foundation and the sanctuary. I'm so excited for you and I'm so proud of you. And I'm really excited for all the people that are going to get to experience the blooming of all of this, including me. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Danny. Yeah. Well, you're a big part of it, so thank you.
My pleasure. Okay, well, until next time, another 11 months. Hopefully sooner. Um, yeah, thank you so much. And thank you, everybody out there who's been listening and following along. I appreciate you all so much. And I'll see you on the next one. Peace.